Welcome back, guys, to another tournament recap. I am reporting now for the Czech League, which has just finished. It was the last weekend, and I played for my club, Slavia Kroměříž. Finally, I'm hopefully able to pronounce it correctly. I've been playing for this club now was the second season, and this was the final weekend. All of the teams were playing together, and the team was able to thankfully stay in the league. It was a super close call this time. We have a pretty good team in general, but this season was not going well for the team at all. I had a pretty good season until the very last weekend, but this weekend did really not go so well for me. But let's have a look at what happened. So as you can see in the first game, I played against Jachym Nemec, who is, as far as I'm aware, one of the most talented Czech players. Not so sure how old he is, but I think he should be around like 16, 17, 18, something like that. And in this game, he completely caught me with his preparation because I also did not expect him at all. He's board number 7 in the list, and well, I'm board number 3. So he was kind of the last guy I did not prepare for. And yeah, he caught me with one line, which is quite sharp in the Nimzo Indian. And I even checked this specific line with A3 for my Nimzo Rogozin course, and I was able to remember basically everything I gave in the course. But the position that came out, as we will see in a second, he was just much more familiar with it than I was, and just played a really good game, as we are about to see. So this line with A3 here is quite topical. There was also this one game, I think it was Ding against Nepo from the World Championship match, which I think now went with D6, and there's a lot of theory developing here. I think it usually goes 92. Actually, Nemec had another game on Sunday against Lamy here, and this is some of the theory. I think the Nepo game went something like C5 perhaps, C5 knight G3. And but those positions, they're quite difficult to play for both sides, to be fair, because obviously white has the doubled pawns here, but he has the bishop pair, and usually white is able to build a huge center with knight G3, E4, F4, similar to what happened in the game later on. I went for B6, trying to figure out the move orders. Was pretty certain that this was the line I want to play, but there are so many different move orders that I took a bit of time here to figure out the one I wanted to get. He went bishop d3. By the way, another typical way of handling the position would be to go d5, but I never really liked those positions. I think they're very easy to play for white. Obviously, they have the bad bishop on c1 for now, but white has such a simple plan to continue with knight e2, short castle, and then f3 and e4. And this knight, if the knight is on f3, usually in those positions, then black is more solid. But usually something like this develops here. Black often goes bishop a6. But white has this very simple plan, as I said. I'm not so sure if they start now with f3 or knight g3, but this is typically what white wants to do. And then bishop e2 and e4, and it's not really easy to stop that. There is some h5, h4 is possible, but that also has some downsides because it's weakening the king side. Yeah, so I played b6, bishop d3, bishop e7. Now bishop e7, by the way, is important. Usually you would like to play bishop a6, but if you could play bishop a6 here, then white is able to push e4 immediately. So now f3, c5, e4, knight c6, and now he played knight h3, which is a very topical line, which I still analyzed for my Nimzo Rogozin course, which is, by the way, dropping soon. I'm in the process of recording the videos. The idea here is that the knight on h3 can sometimes be a bit better than on e2, because sometimes white has ideas with bishop g5 or even knight g5 to develop an initiative on the king side over here. The old classical mainline continues with knight e2, and actually now there are a couple of transpositions to the same-ish as well. This is another move order how it could come. I think c5, is it here? e4. At least a small spoiler here. In my Nimzo Rogozin course, I'm recommending the move knight e8. And let me try to think how it appears. Is it like bishop d3? I'm always a bit troubled by those move orders, but just for you to see something like this is usually what black wants, something like this, yeah. And there is this quite important idea. I think now f4 is I believe the main move, and this is typically where black wants to go for this idea with f5. It can be now that I'm completely mixing up the exact move order, but this is kind of an important idea in those lines, that you always want to stop white from attacking with f5 himself by going f5 yourself as black in those positions. Anyway, there are some possible move orders now, like knight c6, knight e2, and then bishop a6. Now, it looks like black actually lost a tempo because black went bishop e7 and then bishop a6. But in the line I've just mentioned, by the way, the line I'm referring to, I think it's this one, castle, knight e8, f4. I think it's exactly what we had just had now, and now f5. Because we are losing a tempo with bishop e7 and then bishop a6, but white is losing a tempo by going f3 and then f4. So this is how it levels out in the end. Anyway, he went knight h3. I went knight e8, which I think is still correct. Again, I was trying to understand the move orders, because like after that I played bishop a6, so I was trying to figure out, do I start with bishop a6 or do I start with knight e8? Now, I was correct that knight e8 is the right way to start, because knight h3 actually also sets up, as I understood it at least, sets up the threat of bishop g5, because I don't think that white can do that immediately, because then I thought that I could take the pawn, and after e5 now I have queen c7. This is at least what I was calculating. And after e takes f6, queen e5 check, I'm gonna win back the bishop on g5. But after knight h3, now bishop g5 might actually be an idea. So, for example, if rook c8, then also e5 might be there, and then there are some possible sacrifices. So this is how you see the knight can be quite useful. This would be another example, because now queen c7 doesn't work, because there's no double attack, because the bishop is protected. So I went knight e8. Today I checked briefly this stage, and it appears that I could take on d4 here, which actually might be the simplest solution. I did not check much further. Obviously in the game it looks quite scary to allow knight g5 or bishop h7, but it appears that this is probably forced, and now black can and has to go f6 to stop knight g5. I think this is what I looked at, yeah. But after that, it seemed like black was fairly safe actually, because knight g5 is stopped. If queen h4 check, then king g8, and yeah, rook c8 is coming, and it's still, obviously, there needs to be some work done here, but it seemed a bit more straightforward than what I did play in the game. At least considering the fact that I just did not understand the position as well as my opponent. So I played knight e8, bishop e3, bishop a6, short castle, now rook c8. Funny thing is that I was still in my preparation here, but still spent 25 minutes, which obviously was a bit too much. But yeah, I was trying to just remember the different move orders, and I mean it was kind of useful here, because I was still in book, and my opponent now started to think and play the move rook c1, which is a good move, but I was not familiar with that one anymore. I only analyzed queen e2, and now I will tell you what I still remembered. It was now to take on d4, go e5, and after d5, now knight a5. And I still recalled here that that rook c1, knight d6 is supposed to be fine for black. I think it went like this: c5, take, b takes c5, and yeah, if rook takes c5 now, I think something like this came out, and black was doing pretty all right here. But I also remembered that f4 is supposed to be the critical continuation. I think it was here immediately. I only remembered that one, but I could not really remember how it goes on. I knew that there were two directions which are both objectively fine, but both of them were quite complicated. I checked now. What I analyzed was queen e7, and there was one possible repetition like this. But white could also play on. I think it went rook c1, and it got very, very sharp, and it continued. So again, going back to this line, knight h3, it's a very good line for white to try, actually. Kudos to Aram Hakobian, who I think was the one to, I don't know if he invented the line, but he recommended it in his chessable course for white, his 1d4 repertoire, which yeah, really asks a lot of practical problems to black. I think knight h3 is a pretty decent line for white. Yes, so my opponent started with rook c1. Now he did not commit himself to queen e2. And now I was thinking if I could get something similar or if I could get the same, but I don't think I can, because if I try to go for the same thing now, then he doesn't have the queen on e2, which can be quite useful for him. I did not even consider it much, but it appears that c5 is now very strong, which makes a lot of sense, because now he just has an extra rook c1 compared to the other line, and white is much better. So I went knight a5, which is still fine. Queen e2, but here I spent a lot of time and then went for f6. I knew that from analyzing this, f6 was often like a maybe slightly worse, but like a playable option for black, just to try and stop e5. But I was not so happy with it. The thing I mostly calculated was knight d6, but e5 really worried me. And now the move knight takes e4, it already looked very wrong, but I was spending way too much time here on this line. f6, take, bishop h6, and rook f7, and I was, trying to figure out if I'm in time to get out with something like f5 and queen f6, but this was pretty impractical to follow this. In the end, I think that d5 was kind of my main problem, and objectively speaking, the position is even winning for white, and it's not even the only move, which is not that surprising in hindsight, because I'm completely pinned down on the queen side. I have no defenders on the king side, and white is down only a pawn, and has a lot of attacking potential. What is even stronger, I checked, was the immediate f4, or to take and then go f4, which obviously I did not see in the game. This was a bit too much. I don't even fully understand. I guess there are some sacrifices, or queen h5, just knight takes g5 coming, and then after that also rook f3, and black should not be surviving the attack. But it appears that I'm fine with knight f5 here, which I kind of stopped to think after bishop g5, f6, because here, I thought that he could also take and then ruin my pawn structure with bishop f5. But funny thing is that I think even this was possible, and then to take on c4, but I mean, with the double pawns here, this looked very scary. I think the more human solution is to take on g5, which I pretty much missed in the game, but also here it goes on. White can go bishop d3. I think even this sacrifice here was showing what the computer gave. And apparently it's some move repetition, but it also can look pretty scary over the board. So I did not think about knight f5 enough. So in the end, after way too long of a thought, I went f6 here, not being too happy with my position. And my opponent more or less quickly went e5, which I think is also a good move. By the way, here after rook c1, I mean, I'm not so sure if I should even go for that. I could also start with knight d6 and try to go for the same with knight a5, but again, I wanted to start with knight a5 to kind of keep my options, because I was not so sure yet if after queen e2 if I'm going to go for knight d6. Maybe a smarter way to continue is e5. This is something else I thought about, because usually this d takes e5 is not that dangerous, because white, and now the engine is even showing I can take back, but the typical reaction here for black is to go for knight a5, and if white takes, then the pawn on c4 is going to fall. And black should usually be okay in those positions. And another typical reaction would be d5, but now I think that black is just going to be in time with knight d6, which might not have been the case if white started with queen e2 instead of rook c1. I mean, now I think it's a bit of a different story, because now white is immediately pushing f4, and I'm not in time to consolidate the center. So maybe this was the better continuation right here. Okay, so I went f6, the idea being now I'm kind of ready to play knight d6, because after e5 then I can take and there's no bishop g5. So this was my main idea, but he went anyway e5, which was a pretty good move. And now things really started to go wrong with queen e7. It appears that I should go d6 or d5, but I did not like knight f4 coming in, and now him hitting my e6 pawn. But it seems like black is not doing too badly here. I think this was the line which was still possible, but it just didn't look great, because c5 can also be hanging, and yeah, but in the end, black still has some chances here, like even in some point to sacrifice the pawn, or now I think he might not even be able to take it, because the knight on f4 could be hanging. And I have some knight c4 coming, but still, even now that I look at the position, it does not look like what black really wants here. Okay, so I went queen e7, going after this pawn on a3, which, I mean, in the game, again, I thought that this would be not a bad thing to do, because once I take the pawn on a3, I can also target the pawn on c4 better with the queen. But now he played rook e1, which, I mean, even to currently, I still don't fully understand this move, but it is the strongest one in the position. He was sort of preparing for this, but now he goes knight f4. And I guess that in all of this, he just prophylactically stopped me from taking on c4, because now this never works. Because then in the end, usually this line would work, but now the bishop on e3 is protected by the rook. So it just seems like an insanely good prophylactical move, rook e1. Now, I'm not so sure if he could also start with knight f4. It is not as precise, because now I could go for a move like d6. Again, if I would take on a3, it could transpose to the game if he plays rook e1. But I mean, it's really a good move, yeah. I did not see this move coming. Okay, so anyway, I had to go for this, because otherwise, what's the point of queen e7? He played knight f4, also a good move. Hitting, or I mean, I'm not even sure that I want to go d5, but at least it can be an option sometimes. And now he's stopping me, because then e6 is always hanging. Okay, now I went queen a4. Already, I mean, I did not really see what else I can do, but one thing I can say is that I really misevaluated the position. Like, also here, I didn't think that I should be worse, because, you know, black is pretty solid here. Pawn on c4 is a weakness, but it turns out that white is just clearly better already because of the space advantage, bishop pair, and I think the main problem of my position is the knight on e8, that it's just really not joining the game anytime soon. I did not want to take on e5 in this position. Computer says that this is probably the best, but this only opens up the option for him to get queen e4 at some point, and then I don't have f5 anymore. And I thought if queen e4 comes here, then I'm probably just going to get mated. Like, for example, now, okay, he's saying queen b3 is still the best. And now maybe bishop d2, preparing queen e4. Still, I mean, the engine is holding something like this and it goes rook f5, but I did not really want to rely on options like this, and everything is hanging in my camp. Okay, so queen a4 going after this pawn. Rook a1, queen b4. Queen c2, best move again, f5. I had to go for this. I also missed queen c2, to be fair. I thought that he should go for something like this, and then actually from a longer, like when I was thinking about this position like a few moves earlier, I thought that I have knight b3, but obviously I missed that a6 is also hanging, so this should also still be pretty good for him here. I don't know, can I go d6 here? Is that an option? It's just really bad. He can take on d6. If knight d6, c5 is concretely good. Okay, I missed that one. And if queen d6, also just something like queen c2. I mean, my position is just generally really bad. I think I was too materialistic here, not really considering the dynamic aspects of the game. Okay, so now I have to go f5, and this was really not something I want. Bishop d2, also a good move. Now he went after the pawn on a5 and did not take it immediately, which was also wise, because I think if he does that immediately, at least I was relying on this operation, and then I might be able to survive because I can take on c4 next. Still, I'm under some pressure because my knight on e8 is pretty bad, but I would have been quite happy to get this one. But he went rook b1, another very good move. I went queen h4, maybe a good shot, or maybe a good idea. My idea was to provoke g3 and then go back queen d8, with the idea that sometimes f3 could be a little bit soft. Still, I'm much worse here. But I thought I could try to get my knight around with g5, knight g7. But he went knight e2, not weakening himself. Then I went back queen d8. Queen c3, now rook b8. Okay, didn't really see what else I can do. Take, queen a5, knight c7. Obviously, strategically speaking, I'm completely busted here because my pieces are still really bad and he has a lot of space and all of his pieces are in pretty good positions. Rook b1, queen c8. Knight c3, rook d8. I desperately wanted to get some counterplay with d6. Another idea which I had was knight a8, as ridiculous as it looks. to try to get knight b6, but here my problem was he could go knight b5. And I mean, I can get rid of this bishop now. But in the game, I even thought about cb5, which is actually a big mistake, because now I can go knight b6, and it appears that I have enough counterplay here. But he can take with the rook, for example, and still my pawn on a7 probably is gonna drop, and I should be losing. Okay, so I went for this, rook d8. Now the engine claims that he can go d5, which I think in the game I was thinking about, but at least I thought that some material gets off the board. And I think I was only thinking about this one here, and again, I thought I get some material off the board, bishop e6 next, and even if I lose the a7 pawn, I at least can live to see another day. Like, for example, something like this should probably have pretty decent drawing chances here. But he does not have to take the pawn on f5, it appears, and he can go for something like queen d6 and still, and now rook a1 is coming, then bishop e7 back, and then he can take on f5, and then I should be losing. So d5 would have been even stronger. He went back bishop f1, d6, and okay, I mean, to be fair, I was obviously completely disgusted by this position. If I would have the pawn on f7, it would be a bit of another story. But like this, I mean, I'm just full of weaknesses, and it was really terrible. But okay, to be fair, I think I put up a pretty good fight here. I was defending well for some time. At least I did not blunder anything, which was even not that simple, because I was down to 2 minutes and everything is hanging. So I was quite happy here that at least I did not blunder anything on the spot. But it should be technically losing by many margins. Like, he could take on d6 now, king f2, bring the king, and start pushing on the king side, and at some point things are gonna crack. Yeah. But okay, he kept queens on the board, and also I think this stage of the game he played pretty well, just improving his position slowly. Okay, I continued waiting. Now we made move 40. By the way, what I wanted to mention also here, like, if I take on e5, I think it makes things only worse, because now always d5 can be looming, or knight takes a6 followed by d5. But the most important thing is that I just don't have any moves. I can bring the king to e7, but that's basically it. I cannot move any other of my pieces, and white can just slowly try to prepare d5. So it did not seem like a smart decision to take on e5 earlier. Okay, so I just waited around. Thankfully, did not blunder anything. Now king h2, queen e8. And this was sort of provoking him to take on a6, which in the end he did. And actually I did get a pretty good chance to maybe hold the game after that. He should probably try to keep his status quo and at some point try to prepare d5. Like queen e5 would be good. I'm not so sure what I had planned, because if I go back to c6, like now already this is a big threat. And often those combinations are just winning in the end. So I think I would have gone to e7, and no, d5 now is not possible because of queen c5. It's still not so clear how he's going to win. Maybe g3 to stop queen h4. But yeah, I mean, he needs to break through at some point, and it's not yet at least so straightforward for him. Okay, so he took on a6, which looks very logical, and now to push d5. And now I had a pretty good chance to maybe save the game. I played queen e7 very quickly, after which it's lost, and I'm not so sure actually if I missed the move queen d8 or I thought it doesn't really matter anymore, because after queen d8 I have pretty good drawing chances. The point being that after queen e6 I have this one, which I even saw, because this is exactly what I wanted to get, something like this. Like also in the game if queen e7 and if he takes on e6, this is exactly what I wanted to get. I get the knight to c5. I mean, I have to go king g8 first. But even if I drop the pawn on f5, I thought that in something like this, I could have sufficient counterplay with my a-pawn. This is what I was hoping for. But he had bishop d3 now. And if I play queen d8, now my queen is not pinned. So now I could take on d5. And now things are not so simple. I get king h8, and a lot of material gets off the board. I can pick up this pawn on d5, and now it's already a draw. Maybe what I was thinking after the game, when I saw that queen d8 is better, I was maybe unsure about this. No, it cannot be, because now I just get this, and I get the knight to c5, after which I should not really be worse anymore. So yeah, I'm not so sure. what I missed here. Still, to be fair, in this line, I analyzed this a little bit on my phone after the game. I was still not so sure if it's actually holding here. So g6, e7. This is the line I was quickly analyzing. Now king f2, then king f6, king e3. If I take on e7, you can take on f5. So what was it exactly? I think I needed to push a5 at some point. And is king d4 possible here? Now knight e6 check, and then f4 is also attacked. Okay, bishop c2 for whatever reason, I guess to stop a4. Yeah, and then some endgame like this was the best that white could achieve, but probably it's a draw. Like with a stronger engine, I think it was around +1. But white is only 1 pawn up. Probably gonna get my knight to c5, and at least I can continue fighting. So this was a little bit disappointing that in the game I got this chance and I didn't use it. And maybe I would have been able to save a draw here. Did I miss that after c5? I think that was my idea, that if with queen e7 I'm stopping c5, but I think I just missed that. Now I have queen h4 check. Maybe this was what I just forgot about. Yeah, like I played queen e7 to have the idea of knight c5, but obviously bishop d3 is a big drawback, and yeah, now he's threatening to take on f5, so I cannot do this. Yeah, so this is how the game then went. He took on e6, knight c7, queen e5, knight e8 he took here, and also this was pretty important. I mean, it's not like this is the only winning move, but now it is an important follow-up that he has g4. And then bishop takes g6, so this was pretty good calculation by him, because in the end, he's going to take back the knight with check. And also this was a pretty nice technique by him. He just picked up the pawn on a7 with a check, and then went back, consolidated, and after f5 I resigned, because I mean he's up 3 pawns. I won't have any perpetual check, and the king is just gonna run out, and I've seen enough. I mean, he played a really good game, especially the middle game. The only sad part was that here I think I defended pretty well in a horrible position, and then I did not use my chance to have some drawing chances again. But apart from that, I thought it was really impressive. I mean, especially this move like rook e1 and so on. So e5, rook e1, and all of this, I thought it was really showed a pretty good understanding of the dynamics of the position, which I did not manage to show in this game. Okay, so this was the first one. Obviously, a little bit disappointing. After that, I played against Erwin L with the black pieces, and now my plan was to play as solid as possible, and I think it was a pretty decent game overall. He played c4, e6, and I mean, I had the Nimzo the day before and it did not go so well, so I decided to go for the Carlsbad, which, by the way, you can find full repertoire on my members-only channel. If you pay, I think it's now 10 euros per month, you get access to, in the meantime, already like 10 or 11 high-level repertoires. And this was one of the lines I recommended for black with c6 and after knight e2, knight e8, which actually in the meantime has been played by many strong players. I'm always thinking if maybe some of them did see this idea, or if they are just analyzing by themselves. Both can be. But I've seen quite a few games and black is doing pretty well with this. So if you're interested in that, then check out my members only platform on YouTube. Lamy went knight f3 fairly quickly, which to my knowledge is imprecise because it allows knight e4 here. That's why usually white goes knight e2 or queen c2 here. It allows knight e4, but then immediately he played bishop g3 now, which then I thought he came up with some super deep prep. But I realized that I have to be fine here, because after knight e4, I knew that this is supposed to be okay for black. The point being that if white takes, then the knight on e4 is protected. And usually if black gets the bishop to f5 in the Carlsbad, then he's usually fine. And knight takes e3 or knight e6 is coming next, and black is doing okay. So after bishop g3, I took some time, and then I thought that bishop f5 is a practical decision. I thought that taking is probably going to be fine. But my issue was that now he has two different plans. The first one is knight e5, f4. And I don't really like having this pawn on h6. I would prefer to have this pawn on g6 and this one on h7. And another problem which I faced was if I go knight d7, then I thought he can always play g4. Computer doesn't really care about this. He just says I can go rook e8 and knight f8 and just stay like this. But it did not seem so simple over the board. I'm not so sure what happens after knight e5. Maybe just bishop d6 or something. Yeah, bishop d6 is okay. And black is taking over, yeah. But yeah, it seemed quite scary over the board to go for this. So I decided to go for bishop f5, which is also supposed to be okay, as far as I can see. Now he took everything on e4, otherwise if he castles short, then I'm definitely going to take here, and I'm going to have a very comfortable position. Also, the double pawns here are not that great if he has castled short already. So he took everything, went knight d2, and now went bishop b4. Here I was spending some time. The other option was queen d5, which I thought about. Here, however, I did not just like the fact that, I want my knight to be on d5, but the dynamics don't really allow it. So after queen d5, I was considering two options. The first one was queen b3, the other one was short castle. And in general, I was not so sure about a position like this. Could also try to play knight b1, knight c3. But yeah, I'm doing pretty well here. I can just go queen e6 and then knight b6 or knight f6. I guess it doesn't matter. Yeah, and maybe knight d5 next, maybe f5, and the position is equal. Queen b3 was another thing that I was thinking about, and this endgame a b3 or knight b3, and I was also not so sure about that. Important thing here is that knight b8 a5 doesn't work because of bishop b4. And I thought that in this position now, a5 is pretty important. But the computer also says that I can go f5 and allow this, because dynamically g5 works. Okay, I didn't see that. But I thought that a5 would be pretty important to stop knight a5. And something like this, I thought it should be okay, which it also is, yeah. Yeah, but also ab is possible. And I don't know. I was not too concerned about this endgame, but yeah. I thought that bishop b4 just to get rid of the knight was also a pretty healthy option, which I guess is also correct. But I did give him maybe a small chance here. So I took on d2, now knight d7, and okay, he has to play d5 now. Because otherwise, if I get knight b6, knight d5, I'm just going to be better long term, like for example, like this. Knight gets to d5, and it is kind of a good knight versus bad bishop scenario. Not bad bishop per se, because the bishop is also not so bad on this long diagonal, but I'm pretty solid here. Some ideas of f5, maybe even not f5, because it allows bishop e5. But I have some possibilities like h5, h4, maybe rook swing to g6, put pressure on g2. So this should be generally pretty okay. But he went d5. Obviously, he has to go for that. I went knight f6, and now he went queen b4, which threw away his chances of advantage. I also mentioned to him after the game that I was a bit worried about him going d6 here. I can, of course, stop the pawn, but it's always going to be protected, and it's always going to be a bit of a problem for me, I thought. My idea was to go knight d5 now, and just to keep kind of keep everything closed. And then we were briefly talking about this. He suggested f3, which I was not really scared about, because I thought I can just go rook e8 and everything is going to be covered. Also e3 could be weak. But I was generally worried that he might go for some plan with b4, which also the engine is saying that it is the best now. Still, I'm not so sure how bad this actually is. In the game, I was thinking something like queen d7, b5, take, and I have some ideas like f5, g5, f4. But here it's a big advantage for white. So I was also looking at this and bishop e5 now, and I did not really see how it continues. Here it's already winning for white. So I was kind of justifiably scared about this one. So I'm curious what is now the best here. Computer wants to start with rook e8. And what if b4? Another idea which I had was to go knight h5. This was another thing, just to exchange, then put queen d7, rook e6, and I thought if I manage that, then I should be completely fine here. But my issue was actually that he could go d7 now. But computer says that this is fine. I was calculating this, rook a8, now rook c1. And wow, this is 0-0. Interesting. f6, rook c4. I was looking until here. Now rook d4. And I thought that this could be pretty unpleasant because, I mean, the pawn on d7 is not going anywhere, but I always need to watch out for some ideas like queen a5. But I guess if I just stay, maybe nothing can happen. Like also rook d6 was a bit concerning for me. This did not look too healthy to me during the game, so I was not so sure if I would have gone for that. But maybe this is actually the best. The engine wants to play rook fd1 and allow me this. There I would have been more happy, I think. As I said, my plan is going to be this, and rook d8. I don't really see how the engine is going to continue here. Rook e8, he wants rook d4, rook e6, rook d1, rook d8. Yeah, this does not look too concerning for me. I mean, computer wants b6. Even if I go a6, is this so bad? I mean, still, of course, white is the one who is pressing here, but I would have been more worried if the pawn reaches d7, to be honest. Okay, so I did have a couple of options, just probably should not go for knight d5 because this position with b4 could be pretty unpleasant. Computer wants to go this. What is that? Ah, now a1 is hanging, of course. But okay. Still probably does not solve the long-term issues. Anyway, he didn't go for d6, he went queen b4. And after the game, he told me that here he missed the move queen b6. And wow, I didn't even see that I'm better already in this position. I did not really realize that. Like also, I thought if he takes here, that I should not really be better in this position, but my knight on d5 is pretty good. I didn't think that I would be in any trouble, but that I'm, to be fair, I'm also not that much better. It's probably anyway equal, but yeah. He went queen d7. I went rook f d8. A better move might be rook f e8. And what I missed was that I'm actually threatening rook e6 and to trap the queen with rook d8. I didn't see that. Because I thought he could now go for something like b3, but I missed that rook e6 is just collecting the queen, and there's nothing he can do about it. That is a pretty nice trick. So it appears that he just has to give the pawn, and I'm gonna be up a pawn. So that was a pretty nice chance here, rook e8. Pretty nice motive. Didn't see that. I went rook fd8 instead. By the way, already earlier, like here, I thought that he might take on e4. This is what I was expecting. Probably objectively speaking, also a bit better. But okay, it makes sense that, I mean, he just completely missed queen b6. This is what he told me. Even after he played queen takes b7, he still did not see queen b6, which is a bit surprising, but okay, sometimes this can happen. Yeah, I was expecting this, and then I wasn't sure how I would continue. Something like queen b6, rook e8, rook d8. I thought the position should be equal, which also appears to be the case. Okay, also here rook e8 is probably a bit of a more fighting continuation, and then, I don't know, to go some rook e6, maybe a5, a4, was also thinking about that. But as I said, I wanted to play as solid as possible after Friday's game. So queen e4, I went rook c8. Also knight c3 I was thinking about, but it seemed a bit strange to just go for this. I was aware that this has to be a draw, because I'm just so active here, but it just feels like I'm kind of begging for a draw in this line. Like, I don't know, maybe it can go king g1 here. Okay, it's probably quite forcing. Should be fine now. I went for rook c8 first, which also appeared to be logical. Now knight c3 is really an idea, so he went knight e5. Knight c3 also not necessary. I could move the queen instead, also possible. My point was that if I'm stepping into a pin here, but he cannot really go anywhere with the queen because I get knight e2 check. The only critical line was queen f5, because now if knight e2 he can just go to h1. And now I was planning to play queen b5, which actually threatens like rook e8, and if f4 then f6, and he's pinned here. And yeah, I thought about a couple of ideas, like even g4, which the computer is giving, but I thought it should be generally okay for me. I thought I have 92 check, some queen d5 resources, and so he decided to take on c3. And I thought that this should be way simpler than it actually was. White is maybe a tiny, I wouldn't even say that. I just made it very easy for him here. White has some chances to play for something because I have this isolated pawn on the c-file. But if I would have played more proactively, then I shouldn't have any issues. Like, I could probably just push c5 immediately. And if queen a7, c4, just play for activity. And move the queen, get the pawn all the way to c2, and there should not be really any way I can be worse here. I played rook c7, which is a bit passive, yeah, but still an alright move. Queen b2, rook c5. Also this rook d6, my original intention was to go rook d2, which also appears to be much more active. I was just a bit worried about the last rank here and not keeping everything protected, but it seems just like a much more natural move. Maybe rook a5 was what I was then not so sure about, going after this pawn, but it's not even threatening anything because in the end I can take on a2. Like something like c5, for example, I could play. Again, playing for activity and should not have any problems. Okay, so I went rook d6, h3, queen f6 back. So already getting pretty low on time here. Queen e4, g6. Okay, I improved my position. So did he. And yeah, okay, now he gave me a chance to get some activity. I'm not so sure if he needed to play this queen e4 in general and then queen c2 back, because now I get my rook in. Maybe the thing he was relying on was e4, and if queen b2 then e5, but maybe he missed that I have queen takes e5 here. Because if I take on c2, then he's winning because of the intermediate check, but I can just play like this, and then he still has queen g6, so in the end it's going to be a draw. But it's not like I didn't even think rook b2 is the only move. I could also go for something like queen d4 and it should also be nothing. Okay, so now rook b2, rook c2. I took, maybe don't even have to go for that. I could also try to keep the activity going. But okay, it seemed good enough. Queen e5, rook c1, h5, g3. Now that I'm thinking, I don't know, queen e5 makes sense. I'm stopping queen c5. Okay, so this was fine. This move, not so sure that I was such a big fan of this. I don't know if h4 is possible. Yeah, don't really understand it. The computer says it's possible, but yeah. I don't know what is the best continuation here for me. Because my idea was now to get the queen to f3 somehow. Is there a better way to do that? If queen f6, then I thought he could play... yeah, queen f6 maybe, because queen c5 I can just play rook d2. Which feels pretty active. And okay, if he goes queen g2, then king g2, then maybe this. But still, he can go for this rook endgame, which was also in the game. Yeah. Rook f6. Maybe. Wanted to keep the rook on the d-file. But at least I'm blocking any checks. If queen c3, I guess I have queen f5. And now I might be ready actually for h4, g4, and then rook f3, but there's still king g2 there. I'm still not 100% sure what is my idea, like if he goes h4, for example. Guess also just wait. Okay, it was not like this was a big mistake, but this was, I would say so. This was definitely an inaccuracy. Because the rook endgame was actually a little bit unpleasant. Not even a little bit, it was quite unpleasant to defend. I could go for a move like a6 even, but quite normal looks just to go queen d2 here. Just to keep pieces on the board. Now I might actually have some ideas with rook f6. If he goes rook c2, he might even be in some trouble because, yeah, I just get rook d1 and his king is in a lot of danger. So yeah, queen d2 is definitely the move you should make in this position. I went to the rook endgame, which is still a draw. After the game, he told me he should go king g2, which I agree with. King f1 was a little bit slow. Still, it was all right, but king g2 was probably a bit. I mean, there's no reason for him not to push immediately like this. Okay, I brought my king. The engine also claims that I can make a draw like this. I was obviously worried about this one. But okay, I'm in time probably to get some 4 versus 3. If even that, because if he goes rook c7, I can take the pawn and this one is protected. But okay, 4 versus 3, probably white can get somehow, yeah? Like a5, c3, rook c7, and this is kind of gonna come out, which I'm pretty sure I would have been able to draw, especially after making all of those rook endgame videos, which you can find on my channel. So this was another more active possibility, but okay, it was not move 40 yet, so I did not really want to force matters, and it still seemed like I should be solid enough here. So I brought my king, he played g4, take, and now king d8 I think is important. The problem is if I go king d7, he has rook a5, and I cannot protect the pawn. So my plan was to get the king to b6. He went rook a5, rook d7, now f4. Another option was for him to provoke rook c7, which maybe is a more challenging idea. And here I was not so sure. Maybe also king c8. Oh, that's actually maybe a mistake. Then rook a5 back. And it appears that I should not go to b7 with my king. I was thinking about something like this. But now I'm maybe really, really passive. You know, something like g5, f4. I was quite worried about some positions like this. And if I go king d7, king c4, king d6, if he goes back rook a5 now, yeah, I should probably just stay like this and continue waiting, I guess. I'm just curious, if I wait like this and if he gets e4, it's still nothing. Huh. Because if e5, I get king e6, I assume. Like, for example, like this. Can also start with this maybe, and then I should have sufficient counterplay. King f5, king f4. Okay, good to know. Yeah, so this would be the correct defensive setup right here. In the game he played f4, king c8, f5, which surprised me a little bit. I thought that he would go for a setup like this and you know, then try to get rook e5. If king b6, a5, I anyway wanted to play like this to provoke a5. And then I thought he might continue with something like this, but my plan was to go king d6, c5 to start counterplay, which seems like it's holding without too many difficulties. Okay, so we went f5. I traded without much hesitation because trades are usually good for the defending side. King c7, e4, king d6, king e6, and now finally I was able to get activity with rook d1. Still, I mean, also generally because the game was not going so well for me, I was always sort of on the defensive side, at least I was feeling like that. So I was under a bit of tension here, but it was always a draw for the rest of the game. Like, I was thinking about forcing matters with a move like f6. It's also a draw, but you know, I was getting a bit worried about some stuff like this. If he then runs over and tries to push the a pawn, like I was calculating stuff like this, which I don't know, it did not feel like I really need to go for that. Which it is also a draw, but it seemed like just keeping the status quo is a better option, because now whenever he takes a7, I'm just going to take g5. Okay, rook a6, another try. Now if I take here, actually I have king e5 here, which is pretty simple, I guess. I realized that this should also probably be a draw, but would not be so much fun, I think, to defend this. At least if I just don't do anything, let's just say I continue waiting. And if he gets the pawn to a7, then I thought I would be losing, because then he plays e5, e6 next. And if he takes with the pawn, then there's always this. Okay, I mean this first, now e5. But actually, you know what's funny? If I get the king to g7, then it's just a draw. I didn't even think about that in the game. It's only losing if the king is on e7, because now if I wait, then there's e6. If I take with the king, it's check and white is winning. If I take with the pawn, there's this idea, and white is winning the rook. But if I get the king to g7, like let's just say we have this position, probably the only drawing idea is to play king f6. And now if e5 check, then king g7, and then after e6 I can always take, and there's no rook h8 idea. So this position now would just be a draw with king g7. But anyway, I did not really see a reason to go for that. But maybe this is just the simplest king e5, and the pawn endgame is a draw. I assume, fairly easily. Like a6, king d4, king f4, and how's the race? Should be equal, yeah? f4, yeah, it's equal in the end. Both sides are queening at the same time. And draw. Okay, anyway, I went king d6, he took here, and a5. If he takes, I just have rook a5, and it's a draw. Now f6, and yeah, I don't think there's so much else to say about the rest of the game. I did not even want to have like a passive defense here. I guess you can also try to set up some defense like this, but I mean, I'm not down any material, so whenever he starts to, try to use his e-pawn, I'm just gonna, just for example, now I probably would have played king b5, and if he tries to use his e-pawn somehow, I'm just gonna be fine with the race, because I can sacrifice my rook for the pawn, and then he has to do the same, otherwise I get a queen. So fairly decent game against a formidable opponent, Erwin Lamy. Now let's head on to the last game, which was actually the one which I was most unhappy about, because I was not able to win against an opponent which I think I'm usually, especially with the white pieces, usually should be able to win. Especially with how the opening went. I played my Reti, considering it was a morning round. Another thing this weekend, which was a bit unfortunate for me, I mean for everyone to be fair, but on Sunday there was a change of time, so we lost 1 hour of sleep, which I was also not so happy with in that game. My opponent went for this reversed London line with bishop f5, which I'm usually quite happy to face, and I had some pretty decent preparation here. Also, it's not the first time I'm playing this line, so I'm pretty familiar with those lines in general. If you want to learn more about this, then make sure to check out my Reti course, which I made for ChessBase. Link for that in the video description down below, in case you're curious. Played knight bd7, and now c takes d5. This is generally often a reaction after knight d7, because if the knight is still on b8, then black is usually happy to take back with the pawn, and then the knight can come to c6, which is the better square. But after knight d7, if he takes back with the c-pawn, then he has some troubles, because the knight would much rather be on c6 in those positions. And here I think white has some pretty good options, maybe even concretely with some knight b5, or try to push knight c3, e4. But generally, this knight on b6 is a bit of a problem for him. And with knight d7, he has the idea to sort of stop bishop e3, because now he has bishop c5. But the downside is that I have c takes d5. If he plays bishop e7 on the other hand, now c takes d5 is less of an option, because again he has this option to take here with the c-pawn. But now I have bishop e3, and now he does not have bishop c5. So this is kind of the idea for white in this line. Okay, now I took on d5, he took back, queen c2, another typical idea. Now I've provoked queen b6, and now my plan is to go knight c3, followed by e4. He went queen c5, which I still prepared. And I knew that I can go for something like this, and that the endgame should be pleasant for me. I did not check any much further, but during preparation I thought I should be fine in this endgame, and I should have pretty good chances to win. I followed it up correctly with bishop d2. My idea is, if he takes now, my plan is to put the knight to d4, then push b4, and maybe also f4, h3, g4, and he doesn't really have any active plans. So he played bishop e7, and spent a bit of time here and played anyway an imprecise move, which is bishop c3. I should start with b4 immediately. That's also why I thought he should actually start with a5 here, because this is exactly what I want to achieve now also in the game. He played h6, and then I just got b4. So I should just start with b4 immediately. I was trying to think if he has some concrete options like a5 or bishop d8, some ridiculous stuff like this, which anyway probably wouldn't even have gone for. Anyway, he did not use his chance to play a5, but I should have just trusted my feeling and started with b4. Because now if he goes a5, I don't get my plan with b4. Maybe my position is still a bit more pleasant here, but if I don't get b4, it's not so easy for me to make any progress on the queen side. Okay, but now I got this. Knight d2, rook e8. Rook e1, also not really a useful move. But I wanted to keep my options, and after he went rook c8, I thought, He just made two moves which maybe are not so necessary, h6 and rook c8. So now it has to be the time to push e4. But this was really a pretty bad moment of understanding, because once he plays e4, he has a solid position, and my pieces are not really ready for this e4 push. I just did not understand that at this moment, and I should have just played cautiously with an idea which I anyway had, to play like knight d4, and then to start pushing a4, maybe a5, knight to b3, and just to play it a bit more cautiously. I thought that now with rook c8, at least he has an idea to play b6, and here I kind of missed this idea to have bishop h3, which is a bit uncomfortable for him now on this diagonal. Still, generally this would have been better for me. Also to start maybe with a4, I'm not entirely sure. And now he's equalizing with c5, so I guess it is fairly concrete here. I don't know what is the best way for me to start. There was one thing which I was generally considering, and I missed some small detail. Like another thing which I thought about was to go b5 generally, because if c5 I have knight c6, but the problem here was that there is a6 and I'm losing my bishop on c3. But I'm not so sure. Did I miss something here? Maybe b6. Was there b5 possible? It's still not possible because of a6. So I'm not so sure what is the best way to start. I mean, computer says this is possible. Bishop g6, knight b3 also looks logical to me, but it's maybe not the best. Maybe I should start with this. And if b6, knight f5, or just knight b3. Yeah, some position like this, I think. And if c5, I could go knight f5 or I take, now knight f5. This plan with bishop h3 seems to be quite good in general. And if he goes bishop f8, what is the idea? Knight h4. What is the point of the bishop h7? Don't really... bishop f6 is there. That's the point. And now the bishop is on f8. Okay, it's not so easy to see all of those ideas, but I was pretty upset that I went for e4 because it just made things so much easier for him. And even other moves like bishop g4 are fine, which I did not really understand. After bishop g6, also not so bad. Like I thought I get e5 now, then d4, and I have a lot of space. But, you know, he's pretty solid there. And my bishop on c3 is not doing much. Could easily imagine also white getting outplayed here in general, now that I look at it. So e4 was really a very bad moment of just positional understanding. I just have to be completely blunt here and honest about my play. And something more immediate would have been better. Rook e1 is also not really necessary because I anyway want to go knight d4, and anyway e2 is protected. So I think this would have just been the best. Then maybe start with a4, and if he now goes rook c8, I don't really need the rook here. It's probably just much better on c1 anyway. One thing I was curious about was generally this position, how I can make progress in the best way. I thought one idea could be to play knight b3, then knight c2, bishop d4, and then knight c5. I'm not so sure if this is like the best idea which I have here. Let's just say he goes here. Computer always wants to play this move, bishop h3, but okay, just out of curiosity, is this idea which I was thinking about, does this make any sense, knight c2? If he continues waiting, bishop d4. Yeah, it's a possible idea. And then f4, maybe h3, king f2, and at some point, only after thorough preparation, you want to play e4. Only then. So, yeah, I mean, it's not really that difficult. It was just, I don't know, it was not my weekend, so at least I get to live a bit better now with those weekends or generally games that don't go well. Sometimes it just doesn't really run my way, and you know, things are gonna get sometimes it doesn't go so well, then it's just gonna work better. So yeah, not too upset in general, but this moment was yeah, a bit just a bit sad because I was quite happy to get this endgame, and I thought I have very good chances to just slowly outplay my opponent and win a nice game. But with this, I just completely threw it away. Also, he went bishop g6 here, which really surprised me because I anyway wanted to play knight h4. I was expecting bishop h7, and I mean, my idea was honestly to play knight h4 in this position, which is actually quite embarrassing. It's not like it's a bad move, but I don't know, maybe I would have found something better here, maybe just a3 and just play an equal position. So after bishop g6, I was feeling super confident, played knight h4 now with tempo, but funny thing is that the position is still equal. Now I played a3, which seemed like a move I was also quite happy about, just to protect the b4 pawn. At first I was looking at other ideas, like to play knight b3 or knight c4, but I thought in general that it would be quite useful to defend the pawn on b4. Okay, so we went rook d8. Now knight to c4. Also knight b3 might have been a more precise move, because after knight b6 he can start to force me into something, because originally I was thinking about knight e5 now, but then I realized that after rook d3, rook c1, knight a4, I was looking at this line, that there's just not really any way that he can be worse here, I thought, in this line, but it might have still been probably the better option. Like, it just looked like he's so active with the dark squared bishop, and yeah, my knight on b7, I wouldn't call it misplaced, but it's also not that great. But for some reason, bishop e7 seems to be a pretty important move, but I'm not so sure about that. I mean, generally speaking, it just looks like black is really active here. Still, it should have been the better option, I think, because I believe he probably has to go for that. Maybe he can start with knight e4. Yeah, maybe that's a better option. And take knight b7. Does that work? Yeah, strange. Rook b8, e5 goes on somehow. Knight e4 is maybe even what he intended to do, because now if I go here, then he can just take and maybe even protect with rook d7 or rook b8, because he cannot do that immediately, because then I have bishop e5. At least that's what I thought. I also missed bishop takes b4 here. Okay. But still, now it looks a bit wrong, because I can probably consolidate also with a move like rook d1, and now if knight a4, play like this, and now his pawns here are a problem. So I decided to take on b6 and play knight f5, still thinking that I actually have some chance in this endgame because of the bishop pair. But I mean, a few moves later, I was already the one to be a bit worried here, because he played, I think, a pretty good move here with b5. It's not like I'm even pretending to do anything here, but at least I can play a4, and I thought I can do something at least, because maybe I can play b5 at the right time, and then if he takes, then b7 can be weak. Still, he should probably not lose this, but this is what I was hoping for. But he played b5, which is just fixing my pawn structure here. And now, actually, long term, he can already be better. So I was really looking for a way to just finish the game and, you know, move on with life, basically. Played knight g4. I was expecting knight d7, which was kind of the move I was a bit worried about. My idea was now to go passively with bishop c1 to stop bishop b2. But still, I was not so happy about something like this. I thought about bishop b2 and something like this. And in general, like, if he plays, can he play king e7? Now if king c5, there's knight a4 check. And in general, if you can consolidate everything, then I'm basically down a pawn, because my double pawn here is not doing anything. Maybe even this is going to be a draw, but not really interested in defending that. Here I have f6, which is maybe just good enough, yeah. But and now to try to play for activity like this. Yeah, I was expecting knight d7 with the idea of bishop f6. But he played knight g4. I could have now also done something similar, but I thought that now I can just force him to go into an opposite color bishop endgame. If he takes on h2, this would be risky, because now his knight is probably not getting out anytime soon. But he played bishop f6, take, and after f6 I offered a draw, already realizing that, I mean, if someone can be better, it's black, but it is a draw, I was sure of that, because I'm getting the b7 pawn. Still, he can do that, and now king d7, and he can actually pick up the pawn on a3, like this. I thought that this would be a draw as well. What did I miss here? It'd be amazing if I would have lost this game. I thought that this should be a draw. How is black making progress? Let's say I just play this. Let's say g4. Why is it saying -4 here? Don't really get it. Bishop f2. Just waiting. And there's no, I didn't see any way for him to put me into Zugzwang. Let's try to follow this. I mean, what can be? That's the point. And now this pawn on h3 is a fixed weakness. This is the idea. And actually, I'm quite lucky that I offered a draw here. I probably would have realized in the game. I also saw that a4 is possible, and this is probably the way to make a draw, and then put the bishop to c4, and then it should be a draw without many difficulties. Okay. So, yeah, kind of lucky that he accepted here, and that I was not even, you know, forced to find that in the end of the day. He cannot at least trap my bishop, because it can always, I mean, like, it's not gonna get trapped. I should go to a6 again to have this idea, but the thing is, he's not trapping my bishop because it can go out like this. Yeah, okay, this at least is fairly instructive, that I should go a4, then bishop c4, and then I'm making a draw easily here. Okay, so that was it for this weekend. Obviously not that great, not that successful, lost a couple of rating points, but you know, as I said, it's up and down, and if you can learn anything from this video, it's the fact that sometimes it's gonna go well, and sometimes not so much. Sometimes you're also a bit more lucky, sometimes not so much. Like in the first game, obviously, I was fairly unlucky that I went into the line which my opponent knew really well, and he understood really well and played really well. But you know, this is how it is. And yeah, another thing which I wanted to talk about in general was that, you know, if you're an active player and if you play a lot of games, it's gonna even out in the very end. So I've seen some calculations, like there are a couple of numbers which people are saying, like some people are saying after, like if you play 60 games, your rating is going to level out in the end. Sometimes some people say it's a bit more than that. But the moral of the story is that if you are an active player, then it doesn't really matter now if you have 1 or 2 bad tournaments, because your performance in the end is going to level out and is going to reflect your pure playing strength in the end of the day. So that was a recap. It was an XXL recap at the end of the day, more than 1 hour. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If any of you have stuck around for so long until the end of the video, let me know in the video description down below. Would be very curious about that, if you have endured this very intense analysis, and moreover, if you have enjoyed it. So thank you guys for watching this recap. Thanks to my club, Slavia Kromicic, for being a great club, being great to the players. Always really enjoy to play in the Czech League. And that means that the leagues are almost finished. Only the Austrian and the German league are still remaining for the season. That was it for me today. If you want to see more of me, if you want to support me, then check out the video description down below. You can visit my website, felixbroberger.com. Check out my courses, also linked down below. And I'm going to see you guys soon. Take care.